Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and this is Death Skid Marks. The game is $9.99 on the Steam store, and it's developed by Studio Whiskey Tango Incorporated. The game originally came out in 2014, and is an ultra-violent top-down roguelike. But before I begin, you should know that this key was obtained from the key mailer for the purposes of review. That won't change my opinion in the end, but you should know that because FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? The objective of the game is simple. Keep yourself alive and race to the end of the highway to see the concert that you want to see. On the way, you'll have to collect tickets in order to be able to get into the concert for every crew member that you bring along. Now that's easier said than done because everything on the highway wants to kill you. It's sort of like Mad Max, but not really. Basically the idea here is that there will be cars that will try to run you off the road or kill you in particular, so you have to deal with them accordingly. This leads us to the main portion of the game, the car combat. And the car combat has a variety of different strategies and abilities that you can take advantage of. But let's start with the car combat in terms of the car itself. The car can be used to slam enemies against the guardrails, causing them to explode or deal damage while they grind against the walls themselves. Now your car makeup makes a huge difference here. For example, you have your standard cars like a 4-seater car, but you have cars, for example, that have booster engines on the back, which actually can cause flame damage to anyone behind you. Different cars have different abilities, and you'll want to play to their strengths. For example, a fast car may be able to push enemies off the road rather easily, but won't be able to take a lot of damage. But your car is not the only weapon that you have. You actually have your passengers. As you go along, you can pick up passengers to bring with you on the concert. But the thing is that they can help you in terms of the combat. There are two main things they can do: melee damage and range damage. Melee damage will be specific to the side of the car that they're on. So if they get near an opponent, they'll be able to attack them with their melee weapon. Then there's the ranged weapons, of course, which have a little bit less of an impact than the melee weapons, but the thing is you can fire from across the screen and deal a little bit of damage. Now, you have to understand that there are two parts of damage here: damage to the car and damage to the people within the car. You can kill individual people within the car, including the driver. The driver is sort of the linchpin behind this. The fact of the matter is if you kill the driver, someone has to take his place. And in particular, if you kill people who are, giving you a little bit of a problem and they have to take over, that can help you a lot. If there's only one person left in the car, then unfortunately they can't attack you anymore other than smashing into you. And if you've got a better car than them, it's obviously going to go well for you. The way you lose is simple. All your passengers and the driver die is one way, but the other way is that one part of your car has 0% durability, causing it to crash. Now that durability will depend on the car. For example, you see this mullet machine here, which I'm not sure exactly why it's called the mullet machine, but I'm not going to try to answer that question at this point. But the idea here is that the back end of the car is not able to be damaged. There's enough armor on there to pretty much take anything. Only the front is. Now the combat works on multiple levels, and let's start with the control set. The controls are tight enough so that with the keyboard and mouse you can do the damage that you need to do, whether it be via ranged attacks or whether you have to get close and have sort of smash it against their car with your own car itself. Now the thing is that the game will throw things at you that will sort of mess with you in terms of the controls, like potholes. You have enough control to sort of get over that, but it will affect you enough where you have to react very quickly. The controls are in that perfect area where it's not too tight, not too loose, but it's just right. Now what also works for this combat is its variety. The fact is that the game sort of has a card deck-like feel to it. You will randomly get a hand in terms of cards and weapons and people that you have to play towards the strengths of. You'll get a certain car that will have a certain strength to it that you'll want to take advantage of, like the booster on the back of this car. You want to always get in front of them, so you're going to want to choose upgrades and weapons that make sense for complementing that. Now you get to choose your upgrades via this rest stop system. Now this rest stop could have a variety of different elements that you will want to get: guns, melee weapons, upgrades for your car, new crew members, and they're always randomly generated, although you will have a choice once in a while to go down a specific path that may have a specific set of upgrades, like better food, for example. Now, most of the upgrade system is your standard affair in roguelike games like this. For example, your melee weapons will come in different levels of damage, you will have your repair items, your food recovery items, and things like that. But I really want to focus on the jobs aspect of this. Each member of your crew can have their own mission, and that mission could vary from killing other people in other cars to smashing cars off the road. Now, this gives you the money that you need for your upgrade system, so it gives you incentive to take the ones that play to your strengths Or you may just want to go for the biggest upgrades at this point. And that's the sort of decision you have to make. Do I take the lesser upgrade that I know I can get, or do I go for the more risky one where, yeah, I will get a lot of money if I'm able to do it, but I may be backed into a corner and unable to do it in the long run? What was smartly done here is the fact that there are enemies that counter specific types of combat that you'll have to deal with, so you don't want to necessarily specialize in one specific area. You want a little bit of variety in order to be able to deal with other types of enemies. An enemy may not be able to be pushed off screen if you are going that route in terms of combat. You may want some ranged combat in order to help in a secondary manner, and it's done well here. It doesn't feel too overpowered or underpowered in that case. Now, unfortunately, this can lead to a sort of a brick wall situation where you face an enemy that specifically you haven't gotten the upgrades to deal with in an appropriate manner, and he will annihilate you. That's sort of the nature of roguelikes in the big picture, and while it can be frustrating, there's something about this game that makes you want to try it again immediately. What also helps is the hazards of the road. As you see, this hazard warning here sort of warns me of what is coming up on the road ahead, whether it be water gun pushing enemies or whether it be sort of just potholes in general. This does add to the variety of the game and it actually works rather well, but I'll get into where exactly that's a problem later on. Now, the game does throw random events at you, in particular with things like Zugtar. Now, Zugtar himself can make a run because he transforms your car and your people in a specific way. You can get an overpowered car, or you can get a weapon that you probably shouldn't have at this point, or he could go the opposite way and completely wreck you. Obviously, this is great for the early game, and in the mid game, you may not want to even choose to go for him because, well, guess what? It's not worth it. There's also things like the Russian roulette kind of mini games, which is sort of weird because it's great that you can get boost stats, but I feel like there's always an incentive to do it, especially in the early game, because crew members come so easily in the early game. Every pit stop seems to have one of them at this point, and so it doesn't necessarily run the risk unless if you've upgraded them significantly. And the game, well, is rather difficult, and you should expect that from a roguelike. Now, this is the good type of roguelike in terms of difficulty, as I found myself getting further and further as I learned more mechanics of the game, while still giving me a challenge along the way. It felt like a good difficulty curve for this type of game, and frankly, I'm still having troubles with it, but I'm enjoying my time with it. I want to overcome it. Now, the game does have a variety of modes as well, and in particular, I want to note the arcade mode because I feel like game designers don't know how to design new modes in question, and this is a good example. The arcade mode takes away the pit stop system, but does it sort of on the fly. Now, while it's a little bit confusing at first, especially when you've played so many of the regular mode, the thing is that this feels different, but the same at the same time. The same mechanics apply, but you have to do it on the fly. It's a little bit differently and changes up the formula just enough so it feels fresh. I always like playing another game of arcade mode after going through 3 or 4 runs on the regular one, just because, again, it feels nice and a little bit different. But noting what the arcade mode does well, it's also one of the things that the arcade mode and the regular game doesn't do well at all. And the fact is that information-wise, the game doesn't necessarily give you the information that you want from the overscreen. Like, if you get a new item and you don't remember what it does, you can't really see what it does in the main screen. And in particular, this sort of shows itself in arcade mode when you get an item and you have no idea what it does. Okay, this grenade, what does it exactly do? I can't find out in the screen. I can't find out what this character's strengths are, and frankly, I don't know what kind of stats they show. It's a little bit strange, and quite honestly, I feel like tooltips would go a long way to help this game out, because unfortunately, the user is not going to remember all this information in the long run. Now, in terms of the art aesthetic of the game, the ridiculous art style and the aesthetic really works for this game, in particular with the ridiculous nature of it. You will get pop culture references all over the place, and they're done in a way where it's sort of satiring them or, making fun of them in various ways. The thing is that it's fun, it's weird and different, but it fits. It's sort of like a cartoonish Mad Max in some ways, but in other ways it feels like its own sort of thing. The aesthetic is all over the place in terms of strengths and weaknesses. For example, the art and the character art in particular tells a story. The idea of this person having to go through like this treatment and seeing sort of the damage on his face, it tells a story in itself. You get an idea of what this character is going through, and that works rather well. In particular, the small details like when you kill the driver and if somebody's in the back seat, them grabbing the steering wheel and them sort of, feeling like they're actually grabbing the steering wheel works rather well. In other games, that little small detail may be missed, but in this one, that sort of shined through and it really sold the universe in question. On the flip side, something about the UI at times feels off, in particular with some of the starting elements of the game. This text here feels sort of tacked on, like they forgot about it in terms of working it in. Now, these sort of designs are randomly generated from what I saw. The fact of the matter is that information doesn't pop out, and frankly, it looks a little bit ugly when I look at the other elements of the game. There's also this weird effect that the game has. If you get motion sick rather quickly, sort of watch some videos in order to make sure that this won't cause a problem with you. At certain points, my sort of, stomach started to turn with some of the speed elements of this game, and that was really weird because I wasn't having problems at first, but as I was going along, it was starting to show itself more and more. Now, the music selection for this game, of course, is appropriate. The fact of the matter is that you have your rock, you have your punk, you have your heavy metal kind of music, and take a listen to some tracks on this point because it is rather nice. In the end, this game surprised me rather well at how much quality it has under the hood. The fact of the matter is I was rather surprised when I took a look at its Steam stats. As of right now, it's got 16,613 copies sold, plus or minus about 3,000 at this point. And while an update helped, I was surprised it sold that low. There's a very good and solid game here that has a unique premise in terms of the car combat. It feels like a 2D version of Twisted Metal in some cases in a rogue-like fashion. The gameplay is the star here. It's paced well, it's fun in a lot of areas, and it has that repeatability that roguelike should have. Every run felt a little bit different, especially when you were able to choose your characters, when you got those random events coming, and the enemies did provide enough of variety where you had to deal with them in certain ways. In particular, when you got into that second and third areas in terms of the enemies, they really did challenge you in new ways, and now you're trying to keep your crew alive, trying to keep your car undamaged, and really it gave the challenge element to this game a whole new level in terms of excitement. Honestly, at $10, you do get a good amount here, and it feels a lot different from other roguelikes in the genre. I know there are games like Convoy out there, even though this game came out first, but this does work, especially sort of in a Mad Max type of situation. I really feel like the game was sort of underappreciated, and it's definitely worth a look at its $10 right now, and definitely worth a sale look when it does go on sale eventually. Honestly, I can say that Death Skid Marks is something that I will come back to once in a while when I do find time, which is usually in short supply at this point. Alright, this is Dragnix signing out. I hope you got an idea of what Death Skid Marks has to offer. Again, I will leave my Steam review in the description below. It always helps if you upvote it or downvote it, depending on if you found this review helpful, only because that helps the visibility of the review or helps me understand whether or not people had a problem with the review. Again, I always appreciate it if you like this video. It helps it in search rankings and things like that. Always, if you have any other questions about the game or, want to talk a little bit more or just say something in general, you can comment below. If you want more content like this, you can hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all later. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, you may want to hit that subscribe button on the left-hand side. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, take a look at this video on the left-hand side as well. And if you missed my last video, take a look at the right-hand side. Once again, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.